Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of Elder Scrolls Lore, and today we're going to be talking about the city of Windhelm. Now, before we start, I'd like to say thank you to Aries for allowing me to use his music in my channel. I have a podcast now with HB and Kuyo of HB Productions and Imperial Knowledge, and on occasion Kukai, and we'll have a guest on every show, and we'll talk about gaming, lore, a few other stuff, and kind of like topics we want to discuss ourselves. And then feel free to join the Discord chat, and my link will be in the description below. I could not say that in my last cut too. But now Windhelm is one of those history-rich cities because of how old it is, so that's predominantly why I chose this city if I continue on to do cities in the future to start out with. So Windhelm, or the City of Kings, is one of the 9 major cities of the province of Skyrim and is the capital of Eastmarch, and that's the region in Skyrim. Windhelm is, like I said, one of the oldest cities in Skyrim, but is also one of the oldest cities in all of Tamriel, and is a shining example of how the original Empire of Humans was in its prime and how great it could have been. Or how great it was, sorry. Windhelm is one of the largest cities of Skyrim and is rather strategic in its location. It's situated on the Yogrim estuary, which leads to the Sea of Ghosts, and because of this, Windhelm serves as a trading port and a gateway between the sea transport and the mainland of Skyrim. The city is built on the steep hills north of the Yogrim River in Eastmarch, in a pocket area of the Winterhold Mountains, which just shows how amazing the Morans were at their architecture. To connect Windhelm to the southern river edge, there is a large stone bridge that towers over the river itself. It is also the first line of defense in Windhelm as well, being the only way in and out of the city, that is. The Nords of Windhelm have utilized the frozen lands around them for various purposes, ranging from a Nordic tomb for the Windhelm family with Movenskar, and various farms along the road towards the Dumeth Pass and Blacklight. Now, Windhelm in itself is kind of a credit to its time. It's been around for eras, and it's still managed to look relatively the same. Yeah, it's a bit run down, but overall it looks relatively the same to when it was built. That being said, it is a vast and easily coordinated city. The central district of Windhelm is known as the Stone Quarter, and it consists of southwestern Windhelm and the main street. The Stone Quarter houses the town square in front of Candlehearth Hall, as well as the Hall of the Dead and the Temple of Talos. Various shops are held in this area as well, and other businesses that are around. The town square is in between each separate part of the city and leads to the outside and the Great Bridge of Windhelm. The Grey Quarter, formerly known as the Snow Quarter, has currently been used by the displaced Dark Elves from the province of Morrowind. Now, the Grey Quarter takes up the eastern portion of Windhelm and is consisted of mostly the slums. As you go through the streets, you can see all the Dumiri memorabilia and kind of run-down businesses. They don't exactly get fair treatment in this area. The district known as Villenstrad, which translates to the Avenue of Valor, is essentially the nobles district of Windhelm. The Nordic clans of Eastmarch have a home in Villenstrad Quarter, and the other estates inhabit the areas like Hjurm and the House of Clan Shattershield. The Palace of Kings is the seat of power in Windhelm, and is one of the most massive structures in the region. It was built as a palace for Ysgramor himself, and the Windhelm docks are also located on the Yogrim River itself. Just before the Sea of Ghosts is where it's actually situated. You can actually see it from the port. It is also where the Argonian population live, and this is known as the Argonian Assemblage, one of the worst homes in all of Skyrim. Many different families are crammed into this large hall. It's worse than how it is with the Dunmer. So kind of just summarize topics we've already covered in previous lore videos. With the destruction of Sarathal, Ysgramor returned back to Etmora and would come back with his 500 companions and destroy it all. Basically purged the Snow Elves to their near extinction. And basically during this voyage back to Skyrim, the Storm of Separation had occurred, and Yungel, the son of Ysgramor, had perished during this as well, and the companion Yungel would be buried in a tomb along the Yogrim estuary. After one of the battles against the Snow Elves, one of the last ones that is, many of the companion groups had separated, beginning to settle all along the province. Ysgramor, stricken with grief, looked south where the river met the sea and saw the site of a great city. Ysgramor declared that this city would be a monument to the glories of mankind, and felt that his new palace would look over Yungulbaro. He felt that his line would bring peace to the land, something that was denied to them on Atmora. Many of the elven captives would soon go to work for the construction of Windhelm, and many of these now elven slaves would die during the process, either by excessive work or by the hands of Ysgramor's men. Now Ysgramor drove them into work harder by constructing the Great Bridge in between the city and the rest of Eastmarch. The Palace of the Kings was built with large spires jutting out of the clouds to show the dominance over the region. Deep underneath Windhelm, there is a large tomb designed to house 5 of the deceased companions, and Ysgramor should they be called the Sovngarde. However, Ysgramor was actually not buried in this tomb, and he was taken to be buried in a tomb that was along the Sea of Ghosts, so the crypt could look towards Atmora. Although his spirit passed, the heart of his dynasty yearns for the still green fields of Atmora before it had frozen over. And so, the city-state of Windhelm was created, and it lives on even before and after its creator had passed. So, as time went on, the Ysgramor dynasty had ruled out of the city of Windhelm for a good amount of time. The 13th of Ysgramor's line, Harald, had accomplished many things for the people of Skyrim, and had made the province what it is to this day. Harald's forces had eliminated the last of the Snow Elves in the Rift and relinquished all holdings from Atmora, then making it more of a centralized kingdom of Skyrim, naming Windhelm as its capital. As Harald became the first king of the Nords, the Atmoran companions returned to their homeland, and the Nordic kingdom expanded themselves as a militaristic power. The Nords finally looked towards their destiny and sought to conquer the whole continent of Tamriel. Within a few years, the Nordic Empire had conquered the lands beyond the traditional borders of Skyrim to modern-day Daggerfall, to the Nibelheim, and to the western front of Morrowind. As time went on, the youngest son, Vraj the Gifted, had assumed the throne and established Windhelm as the capital of the first empire of the Nords. Sometime during the Second Era, the city-state of Windhelm was ruled by Jarl Elgir the Unminded, whose rule was despised throughout the land. While his people were freezing to death, the palace of Ysgramor would be the place of hearth and revelry. Elgir would give little to no attention to his citizens of Windhelm, and the court wizard was a mysterious and fear-inducing person to the people. He would visit the homes of the people at strange times, only to leave a bloody mess on the floor, and he was also known as murderous and demented. Windhelm's people were starving, growing insane with lack of food, and this was just unacceptable. The people of Windhelm, having no justice at all, took matters into their own hands, and they prepared to breach the gates of the palace. The residents of Windhelm stormed it, and it is unknown how the revolution had ended, but Elgir's time as Jarl would pass. The date of this is also left unknown, but letters detailing the events were recovered in the Third Era. So the Jagged Crown was an ancient helm that was created by King Harald as a symbol of the sovereignty of Skyrim. It, however, was lost to the time when Borjas of Winterhold was slain by the Wood Elves during the Wild Hunt. The crown was replaced by the Crown of Verity, a mystical crown that chooses the heir of the next High King of Skyrim. During the reign of Versidue Shay, High King Logrif of Skyrim was assassinated, leaving the throne of the High King to his daughter Freydis of Windhelm. But controversy would arise when Jarl Svatir of Solitude claimed that Freydis was illegitimate heir to the throne, even though the Crown of Verity had chosen Freydi to be the next in line. Instead of civil war, a moot was created where it ended in favor of Svatir. The contradictions caused a schism between the Nords of West Skyrim and the Nords of Old Holds, which resulted in the provinces separating into the independent kingdoms of Western Skyrim and Eastern Skyrim, with the latter being ruled by High King Freydis, and her descendants would rule across the kingdom for generations. So during the interregnum period, interregnum period, of 572 of the Second Era, the Kingdom of Eastern Skyrim was ruled by Mobjarn Flamehair, who resided in the city of Windhelm and had 3 children. Around the same time, the second Akaviri invasion had commenced under the supervision of Adusum Dir Kamal. It had begun with the sack of Windhelm, and when the Akaviri army had besieged the southern gate for a brief second, after that, the city of Windhelm was razed by the invaders, resulting in the death of both Mobjarn Flamehair and Princess Nirnhild. One of the twin brothers was Fildgar Strongprince, and he was present at the battle, showcasing his battle prowess alongside the Stormfist clan. The other twin brother, Druin Skaldprince, had arrived into Windhelm, joining the fray with his companions, the Pack of Bards. A new leader was needed to rule over the eastern Skyrim region and to force the Akaviri army out of Tamriel. Fildgor stepped in and claimed the throne, expecting Jarun to comply. However, the Skald Prince refused to accept such a man of war onto the throne of eastern Skyrim. Fildgor Strongprince did not take Jarun's defiance lightly, so he rallied the Stormfist clan and prepared to attack. Realizing that a civil war was being conceived before him, Jarun challenged Fildgir to a traditional Nordic duel. Whoever succeeded would be crowned the new High King of Eastern Skyrim. It was the most prolonged 3-hour fight in history, being dubbed the Brothers' War. The duel was brutal, weapons clashed, and blood was drawn, but in the end, the newly proclaimed Jarun, the Skald King, had garnered victory by shattering Fildgor's weapon during the battle, and demanded him to surrender. Fildgor was forced to surrender, and he was exiled from eastern Skyrim. The Stormfist clan was also chastened for supporting him. Fildgor would live out his days in the territories of Daggerfall, cursing his brother's name. Now that Jarun was leader of Windhelm, he gathered his forces and traveled to High Hrothgar alone to seek the aid of the Greybeards. So, Jarun traveled to High Hrothgar, and the intent was to seek aid from the Greybeards. However, the religious group were pacifists, as we discussed earlier, and they decided to summon Wolfhearth to help aid him from Sovngarde. Now, I'm not going to get too much into this because this is starting to involve the Alliance War. However, we kind of covered it earlier, and if you want to go into a little bit more, and this is just less about the city of Windhelm and who ruled it at the time, so we're going to kind of just skip a little bit of this and move on to the later events. So we don't know too much of what happened to Windhelm during the Oblivion Crisis, and really we don't know too much what happened during the Third Era, but we do know a lot that happened later on in the Fourth Era. So during the Great War, around 176 of the Fourth Era, the city-state of Windhelm was ruled by Hroeg, who was known as the Great Bear of Eastmarch, and he was also a member of the Stormcloak clan. So Cloak. Or Clock, whatever some of you guys think I say it. And they were one of the most prominent Nordic clans throughout all of Eastmarch and the Old Holds. His only son, Ulfric, had an impressive record ranging from being a veteran of the Great War to being a former student of High Hrothgar. And when the Forsworn of the Reach under their king, Madanach, had captured the city of Markarth, Ulfric was summoned to deal with the city and retake it without imperial assistance. Now Ulfric demanded that the worship of Talos be permitted in Markarth as they were promised, despite the laws set forth by the White Gold Concordat. However, this was kind of pulled out from under them by the Imperial Legion and Jarl Hrothgar of Markarth, and they were forced to imprison Ulfric and continue the ban over the worship of Talos. And this was only because of the order of the Thalmor. Now Hroeg Stormcloak of Windhelm had perished, leaving Ulfric to inherit the throne of Windhelm. The Empire's failure to honor their agreement was one of the catalysts for Ulfric for an impending conflict. Believing that the Empire had abandoned the people of Skyrim, at Jarl Hroeg Stormcloak's funeral, Ulfric was forced to deliver his eulogy via a smuggled letter from prison. After Ulfric's release, he inherited the throne and became Jarl of Windhelm. So with the High King of Skyrim at the time was Istald, who ruled from the city-state of Solitude, and this is located on the other side of the region, on the western side of the region, the more, I guess, in a sense, quote-unquote, progressive region. He died of old age. and the new ruler needed to take his place. And so a moot was decided and held in Skyrim, and ultimately chose his son Torrig to assume the throne as High King. Ulfric did not necessarily like this. He was present at the moot where he would make calls for independence, and he was just shy away from treason, which Torrig actually did respect. Ulfric viewed Torrig as a symbol of the Empire and a symbol of the betrayal he felt under the Markarth incident. So in 201 of the Fourth Era, Ulfric traveled to Solitude and sought himself an audience with the High King himself. In the aftermath of their meeting, Ulfric had slain Torrig in a traditional Nordic duel and fled back to Windhelm. Several moments later, the Skyrim Civil War had commenced. So Ulfric amassed his new army, the Stormcloak army, and the war went on. And as time went on, our Jarl Ulfric would be captured at Darkwater Crossing and sentenced to death at Helgen, and he would only survive due to the intervention of the dragon, or the start of the Dragon Crisis, and thus the events of The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim would continue and happen. So at this time, we'd also know that the Red Year would happen during the Fourth Era, and after this, the city of Windhelm got a influx of Dunmer refugees, and they were given a place in the Snow Quarter of Windhelm, and they was eventually renamed to the Grey Quarter due to the greyskins of the elves. And when Ulfric became Jarl, all Dunmer of Windhelm had to live in this quarter. The Argonians were forced to live in poverty outside the city. They were not allowed in, but they were actually more respected by the Nords, honestly, which is kind of weird. And they served as dockmasters under the employment of the Shadowshield clan and the Cruelseed clan. But nevertheless, the Dark Elves were treated very poorly by the Nords, consistently being bullied and looked down upon by them. When the Civil War commenced, many Nords would accuse the Dark Elves of being supporters of the Third Empire and essentially spies. At this time as well, during 201 of the Fourth Era, there would also be a murderer that would be going around and basically be going around murdering everybody, and this would turn out to be Kalitzko Kurium, and he would be murdering just a bunch of people because he was pretty sadistic. So he ends up being killed by either A, the Dragonborn, or B, an unknown warrior, but regardless of which, he will be killed. But some minor events that we really don't get too much about is the Tiber Wars, in which the city-state of Windhelm served as the base of operations for the Imperial Legion as they were guarding the Doomless Pass in the east, and this is likely when Tiber Septim conquered Morrowind to establish the Treaty of the Armistice. And then as well, in 338, the Fourth Era, the candles of Candlehearth Hall were lit when the great warrior Windhelm had passed away, and his son Darocht had lit the candle and has not gone out ever since. His home was converted into Candlehearth Hall and is one of the most important inns in arguably all of Skyrim. So with that being said, there is not too much else. Like, Windhelm is one of the most prominent cities of all Skyrim and is one of the oldest cities in Tamriel, as we've discussed a few times now. But I want to know what you guys think. If you guys have any recommendations for topics I should cover below, if you kind of like this idea, if I should keep it going, let me know in the comments below. And I really do hope you enjoy. This is a lot of fun to kind of go over and research, so I had a lot of fun doing it as well. So I hope you guys consider liking and subscribing if you enjoy content like this. And I hope to see you guys in the Discord chat. See you all around. Peace.